welcome to a truly multicultural edition of Reading Aloud, the book programme full of inspirational ideas for you and those you teach. Today, here in Birmingham, a staggeringly diverse city, we're going to be mainly focusing on books that seriously challenge the way we think about cultural differences and race.
Also in this week's show, how a game of noughts and crosses inspired an award-winning book, a story that turned these teenagers into avid readers. We meet the creator of Horrid Henry. No! And Living Through a Revolution, the memoirs of a Handsworth head.
But first, I've got a few things to say about how teachers have been helped or hindered by the ever-growing mountain of books designed to help children understand multicultural Britain today. My view is that they offer a more realistic picture of who we are than newspapers and TV do. Britain has always been a multicultural society. Britain has always been involved abroad. If ever we ask ourselves why Britain looks the way it does, all we have to remember is the Nigerian who was once asked why he was living here. And he said, "We're here because you were there."
Now, Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. The title of this powerful and provocative novel was actually inspired by the brain-numbing game.
Noughts and Crosses is one of those games that no one plays much after childhood because nobody ever wins it. And I thought that perfectly summed up kind of racism and living in this society, because ultimately no one's ever going to win. And it just seemed to suit kind of the name. It seemed to be good names for the two societies. Kind of noughts conjures up this idea of nothings and zeros, and crosses kind of being closer to God in every way, or that's how they see themselves.
In the book, the noughts, who happen to be white, are second-class citizens in a world dominated by crosses, who happen to be black. Enter two lovers, Seffi, a cross, and Callum, a nought. And the stage is set for an explosive Romeo and Juliet story.
Well, there's an incident in it that I've had an awful lot of letters about, where a naught girl is injured and she's got a dark brown plaster on her forehead. And I've had so many letters about that from sort of white people saying, "Oh, I didn't realise plasters were kind of pink before," because I turned that on its head and she's got a brown plaster on her head. And Seffi says, "God, that stands out." And Shania says, "Well, they don't make pink plasters, they only make dark brown ones, because, of course, the plasters are the colour of the majority." But Noughts and Crosses was actually my 50th book. And by then I thought, I'm ready to write about race now, and I wasn't so anxious about being kind of known as the race writer. And I just felt really ready to do it then.
It's certainly a book with a message, but would it appeal to the teenagers at this special school in Birmingham? All these students have emotional and behavioural difficulties, and as a result have suffered big gaps in their education. Some never pick up a book.
I was quite interested in the issues in the book, and the children seemed to need some sort of stimulus to get them reading, and so we embarked on the book.
Noughts, even the word was negative, nothing, nil.
When I explained what Noughts and Crosses was about, the black children were, yes, because for once the black were going to be on top. But this attitude did seep away as they got into the book. The issue became less about black and white. It became about Callum and Seffi.
Wasn't the whole message of the good book to live and let live? So how could the Crosses call themselves God's chosen and still treat us the way they did?
Ordinarily, they would not pick up a book and use it for entertainment. With this book, not only did they take them home, but they read them voraciously. And they came in each day having read 30 or 40 or 50 pages in their own time with phenomenal enthusiasm.
It was a really good book, and the storyline was great, and the way the chapters were written, each main character alternating, was really good, because you could understand the points of view of both and understand where the story's coming from on both sides.
One of the boys took the book home and read it in a night. And when he came back to school, he said, "I haven't done my homework." He was supposed to go home and learn about a character. "I haven't done my homework because I couldn't put the book down. I'm afraid I've read it." And he must have read 200 pages in this night. We were thrilled to pieces with that, and I wanted to help him to continue to be interested, and I gave him 2 or 3 things to choose from, and he decided that he would like to put a section of the book into play form.
So Callum, where are you going today?
Shopping centre?
Callum, you don't want to go there. Not today.
Jude?
Why shouldn't I go? What's going on?
Don't go there, Callum. I think it's a really intriguing book, and I just absolutely love it, because when you read it, you can't put it down because it's one explosive moment after another. Callum!
So we've got a situation here where children who don't usually read became readers. Is that because you found a book that was right for them?
We've got non-readers pestering people to read to them, and we've got readers who are able readers but haven't found anything that was interesting enough before. Yes, reading absolutely wildly by themselves.
So it seems Mallory Blackman has worked a real miracle with those students in Birmingham, getting kids who didn't even read the backs of cornflakes packets to actually pick up a book and read it. Amazing. And there's a Californian called Francesca Simon who's performed an equally impressive feat with younger, reluctant readers with her tales of Horrid Henry.
The original idea was always to look at families where you have a good child and a bad child, which I think is a very classic thing that occurs in all families, and all children always know where they are.
French restaurant. Oh no! That meant no burgers, no ketchup, no pizza. That meant no! I don't want to go there, howled Henry, who knew what revolting poison would arrive on his plate, covered in gloopy sauce with green bits floating about.
I suppose because I see a lot of comedy in family life, and I think it's also a way of laughing at myself as a parent. Because sometimes you hear, even though I have one very well-behaved son, you sometimes hear yourself as a parent and all you're doing is criticizing. And just to hear that kind of voice in my head makes me laugh, and I suppose makes me more aware of it. One of the things I think that's really fun for teachers is that the books take about 11 or 12 minutes to read. So they're perfect for story time at the end. They also allow teachers to show off all their funny voices. And I think it's fun. A lot of teachers are great performers, and it really gives them a chance to shine.
This is the Soho Road in Handsworth, Birmingham, where cultures collide. Not far from here, there have been recent clashes between the Asian and black Afro-Caribbean communities, but nothing to match the intense violence and rioting that took place 20 years ago. The head of a local primary school, David Winkley, found himself effectively in the middle of a war zone.
The news that something is afoot sweeps through the school like wildfire. Already there are gangs of boys roaming up and down Grove Lane. They are settling on the curbs of pavements and seated on walls, baseball bats in hand, anticipating trouble. Some of the children are frightened, but the local boys are not interested in the children. For them, these are the preliminaries to some possible war. Its purpose, its motivation, puzzlingly obscure.
The school and David Winkley, now Sir David, survived and prospered. His book, Handsworth Revolution, has become something of a template for those seeking to transform schools in deprived areas.
One of the qualities of a great school, as opposed to a satisfactory school, is its ability to take on a continual challenge of innovation. So, always asking the next question, how can we make this school better?
And where does that innovation come from?
I think it starts with a vision, with a sense of utopia. Now, you'll never get to utopia, and you'll notice that through the book, the theme of utopia recurs, but it's an elusive theme.
And David's utopian vision was challenged dramatically on one occasion when the netball team suffered racist chants while playing a largely white neighbouring school.
We simply stopped the game and said, we're not carrying on, we are now going home. And indeed, we were confronted by some very aggressive, racist parents on the way home, one with a big dog. But a stand has to be made in that kind of situation.
We heard there about an incident where David Winkley stood up to racism. Is that a theme that runs through the book, Winsome?
It sort of hops, skips and jumps through the book. It isn't a book about racism in education.
I think he's very blunt. I think he's the opposite of politically correct, if you like, and considering all this happened a very long time ago, he was able to act very boldly in an unapologetic. He wasn't mincing around in the way that a certain kind of liberal conscience might have done at the time. He was very direct.
And isn't that because of his belief in the community around the school? I mean, he has an almost abstract idea, doesn't he, that you have the school and the community, and perhaps wherever it might be, these two groups, if you like, must get on.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that actually comes across very, very well, is this idea of a multicultural community within the school, within the local community, but also at a national level.
I love also the way that he leaves the school and goes to the community. You know, something happens in school and he has this way of working with parents, with agencies, that sort of takes down their resistance.
But the government got interested as well. Now, what were they interested in?
A number of things. His emphasis on maths and language in the mornings.
A whole morning?
Yes. A whole morning. His concern to have a record-keeping system whereby the progress of every child could be monitored through the years. His concern to have a rigorous, tough-minded set of professional appraisal that gave him, the head, and his colleagues a sense of where they were going.
And that appraisal came from outside?
Came from outside.
It did.
So, do any of those things strike us as familiar?
The way he likes to depict it is that he was very ahead of his time, and for him, the government were just playing a kind of catch-up behind him and his ideas.
I don't think really it is Handsworth Revolution, that book. I think it is Handsworth Evolution. Because actually he didn't just turn up in 1974 and turn everything over in the course of a year, did he?
No,
it
took a lot. That's
Very
right.
few people stay in the school for 23 years and transform it in the organic way that he did.
Indeed. Is this a book that we enjoyed? I did.
I absolutely loved it. And it's not a book I would have chosen myself to read. I wouldn't have picked it off the shelf. But once I started it, from that very beginning where you're introduced to him as the deputy head going for the headship, and you kind of see it not just through the school's eyes, but as a sort of more historical fact book of Handsworth as well. I mean, previously I've heard of the Handsworth riots, but never, I was, too young to sort of have understood it at the time.
Having read it, in fact, I've reread it because it's amazing, because I actually lived through that. And I could pick out bits and was thinking, oh, yeah, this is really, really good. Amazing book.
He understands that teaching is fundamentally an art and then a technique.
So we've got quite an inspiring book there. We've got a history, we've got an autobiography, and even some, well, plenty of educational theory, all rolled up in one book. That's all from Reading Aloud. If anyone should doubt the power of reading in overcoming prejudice and inequality, then look no further than the highly successful African-American talk show host, Oprah Winfrey. Reflecting on her success, she said, "I knew there were other places, another way of being, another kind of life and a way out, because I had read about it." Goodbye.